Let me tell you the story of my grandfather, Koos Gerber. The Gerbers were well regarded people in the Cape, but my grandfather's family did not have it easy. He grew up on the farm of an uncle where his father worked. Probably as a child, he would go with the sheep because most of the wine farmers in the Cape had rights to graze their cattle in the mountains. Opa worked from a young age. He never went to school. And when both his parents died, he was the eldest and he had to look after his brothers and sisters. He had to earn money, and he did so also by speculating with sheep, by buying sheep, renting grazing, fattening the sheep and selling them off. He managed to put all his brothers and sisters through at least the basic schooling. In the process, he met a young girl, Martha de Toy, and they started corresponding in secret until one day Opa Gerber, Koos Gerber, went to see Mr. de Toy and said, "Mr. de Toy, I'm asking permission to speak to your daughter." Mr. de Toy, probably in the cellar of his farm, bottling the latest vintage, looked at him and said, "Mr. Gerber, I'm very sorry, but my daughter will only speak to a landowner." Opa Gerber did not let this get him down. He had heard that after the Anglo-Boer War there were farms going for reasonable price up in the Transvaal. He selected a farm called Atalia in the Piet Retief area, in the Klein Vrystaat area, and there's a story behind that, maybe for another time. He bought the farm, and we had somewhere in the family records a letter from the previous owner saying, "Mr. Gerber, I'm sending back your first check. A check has to be signed." Opa went back down to the De Toy farm and presented Mr. De Toy with his letter of transfer, his deed of sale. Mr. De Toy looked at it and said to him, "Mr. Gerber, I'm very sorry, but a farm up in the Transvaal doesn't count. It has to be a farm here in the colony." He was not a hard man. He helped them to buy a farm in the Oeverrex, a wine farm where they settled down, started their family. My mother told us that she was about 12, 13, 14 when one day her mother confronted her father and said to him, "You helped us buy a farm and you knew this farm will never be successful. Your family will never respect my husband because they will always see him as a laborer. We are selling up, we're moving to the Transvaal." And so they did. They settled on the farm Atalia. They bred cattle, maize, they sold milk. They did reasonably well with planting wattle trees because the wattle bark was used to tan leather and there was a good market for it. And Opa brought up his children and became a well-regarded farmer. One of the things that I remember vividly of him is the great respect he had for any form of knowledge. Maybe because he never had the chance to go there, and he would ask us what we had learned at school and understood and really wanted to know more. I remember him coming home from the veld, sitting on, looking into the kitchen and telling the people there, "I'm back." And then he would sit on the stoop, take off his half boots, and they would bring him a zinc basin with warm water in it with a bit of mustard. He would rub his feet with pleasure, and he would look at me sort of to the side and say, "A man has to look after his means of transport." And then he would look up the hill at the cattle coming home, and he would say, "Look at the fat cattle and the hill groaning under the weight of them." He had a great sympathy for nature, for people, for everything. There were swallows nesting under the eaves of the stoep on Natalia, and Opa made a point of it every summer to put a jute bag on top of the roof so that the swallows wouldn't have such a terrible heat in their nest. Yeah, one of the things he was very proud of is how he, as an unschooled person, got to teach a high British official how to farm. This British official, a certain Mr. Sands, was an officer during the Anglo-Boer War in that area. Met a girl, fell in love, they married. He went on to India to a prosperous career, came back and retired in Piet Retief. That's a story for another day. But Oupa had to teach him the basics of farming. He had a great respect for his wife and for her knowledge, and she was seen as a well-read person. She had 6 years of schooling. She made a point of keeping up her reading. She set aside an hour every day for reading, and she kept a basin with cold water next to her with a face cloth, so that if the children disturbed her, she would wash their faces. She, at the age of 84, she visited us. I was reading a rather esoteric science fiction book, and she asked me about it and asked to read it after I'd finished. I was surprised at the comments and the insight that she had in something that must have been totally strange to her. And that is the story of my grandfather and my grandmother. Inspiration for us as a family to live up to.